The fluorescent lights of Target buzzed overhead, casting a sterile glow on the overflowing cart I was pushing. "That'll be $247.38, the cashier chirped, her name tag reading Brenda. I swiped my card, a familiar routine after a weekly grocery run. The machine beeped, a harsh, unfamiliar sound. "I'm sorry, Mum. Your card has been declined." Brenda's smile faltered, her eyes flicking to the growing line behind me. "Oh, there must be some mistake," I murmured, my face flushing with heat. I tried again, certain it was a glitch. Another beep. "Perhaps you have another card?" Brenda asked, her voice now laced with a hint of impatience. My stomach twisted. I fumbled through my wallet, pulling out my backup credit card. "Declined, I don't understand," I stammered, the weight of the stairs burning into my back. A woman behind me sighed dramatically. "Some of us have places to be," she muttered. "I apologize," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "I'll just put these items back." The cashier nodded curtly, already ringing up the next customer. My hands trembled as I began unloading the cart, the brightly colored packages suddenly mocking my embarrassment. Canned peaches, Eleanor's favorite, the expensive salmon julienne always requested for dinner, the organic blueberries I'd splurged on. Each item felt heavier than the last, each a symbol of my sudden, inexplicable fall from grace. I caught Brenda's eye, a mixture of pity and annoyance in her expression. "Do you need help with that, ma'am?" she asked, her tone softening slightly. "No, thank you," I managed, forcing a tight smile. "I'll manage." The walk to my car felt like an eternity. The automatic doors hissed open, offering a brief respite from the judging eyes. I slumped into the driver's seat, the groceries still piled in the back, and let out a shaky breath. How could this have happened? I'd always been meticulous with my finances, always made sure there was enough to cover Eleanor's tuition, Julian's extravagant tastes, and all the other expenses that came with maintaining our comfortable lifestyle. I grabbed my phone, my hands still trembling, and called the bank. "Thank you for calling First National Bank. This is Sarah. How can I assist you?" A cheerful voice answered. "I'm Evelyn Stewart." "Account number." I recited the numbers, my heart pounding in my chest. "I'm having some trouble with my cards. They've both been declined." There was a pause, a rustling of papers. "Mrs. Stewart," Sarah said, her voice now tinged with concern, "it appears your accounts have insufficient funds." "Insufficient funds?" I repeated, incredulous. "That's impossible. I had a significant balance just yesterday. I'm showing a zero balance on both your checking and savings accounts, ma'am," Sarah confirmed, her voice gentle. "There have also been several large withdrawals and transfers made in the past few days that you may not recognize." Large withdrawals, transfers. A cold dread began to creep up my spine. Something wasn't right. "Can you tell me more about these transactions?" I asked, my voice tight. Sarah proceeded to list a series of transactions, each one more baffling than the last. Luxury purchases, international wire transfers, amounts that made my head spin. These weren't my purchases. This wasn't me. "To haven't made any of these transactions," I whispered, my mind racing. "Someone has stolen my identity." The drive home was a blur. I parked the car in the driveway, then eaten groceries still mocking me from the back seat. I stumbled into the house, the familiar comfort of my home now tainted with a sense of violation. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at that open mail piled on the counter. A pre-approved credit card offer caught my eye. It was in my name, but the address was unfamiliar. I opened it, my heart sinking as I read the details. Another fraudulent account opened in my name. This wasn't just identity theft. This was calculated, deliberate. This was personal. I thought about Eleanor, her upcoming wedding, the dreams we'd shared of a beautiful ceremony, the joy I'd anticipated, and Julian, his charming smile, his expensive tastes. Would they still want to be part of my life when they found out I was practically penniless? The thought was a sharp stab of pain. But then, a flicker of resolve ignited within me. I wouldn't let this ruin everything. I wouldn't let whoever did this get away with it. I would find out who was responsible, and I would get my money back. Every last penny. I gathered the scattered documents, the declined credit cards, the fraudulent applications. This was more than just money. This was about reclaiming my life, my dignity. This was about revenge. The steering wheel felt cold beneath my trembling hands. How could this happen? I whispered to myself, the echo of the cashier's words still ringing in my ears. I'm sorry, Mum. Your card has been declined. Declined? My card. The card I used just yesterday. I gripped the wheel tighter, replaying the scene in my mind. The cashier's polite but dismissive tone, the growing line of impatient shoppers behind me, the burning flush creeping up my neck. Perhaps you should try another card, she'd suggested, her smile strained. I fumbled through my wallet, pulling out another credit card, praying it would work. This one too, ma'am. Her voice was softer this time, almost apologetic. Shame washed over me as I mumbled something about a bank error and practically fled the store, leaving my intended purchases behind. It was more than embarrassing. It was unsettling. Something was deeply wrong. As I drove, my mind raced. I'd checked my balance just last week. There should have been plenty of funds available, more than enough for a few groceries. It must be a mistake, I muttered, trying to convince myself. A technical glitch, a system error, something. But a nagging doubt gnawed at me. This wasn't just a declined transaction. It was a feeling, a premonition, like a cold draft in a locked room. I pulled into my driveway, the familiar comfort of my home doing little to soothe my unease. I need to check my account online, I said aloud, as if voicing the thought would make it less daunting. Inside, I hurried to my computer, my fingers clumsy as I typed in my bank's website address. The loading screen felt agonizingly slow, each second amplifying my anxiety. Finally, the login page appeared. I entered my username and password, holding my breath as I clicked submit. The page refreshed, displaying my account balance. My heart sank. 0. The number stared back at me, a stark, unforgiving void. This can't be right, I whispered, shaking my head in disbelief. I clicked on the transaction history, scrolling through the entries. A wave of nausea washed over me as I scanned the list. Unfamiliar charges, exorbitant amounts, purchases I never made. My breath hitched in my throat. Someone had drained my ounce. Every last penny. Who would do this? I wondered, my mind reeling. Then a thought, a horrifying possibility, flashed through my mind. Marcus, my own son. He'd always been irresponsible with money, constantly asking for loans, always promising to pay me back, promises he rarely kept. I pushed the thought away, refusing to believe it. He wouldn't. He couldn't. But the seed of doubt had been planted, and it grew with each passing moment. I remembered a conversation we'd had a few weeks ago, him asking about my bank's online security protocols, feigning concern for my financial well-being. "Just making sure you're safe, Mom," he'd said, a too wide smile plastered on his face. At the time, I dismissed it as his usual, albeit clumsy, attempt at showing affection. Now it felt like a calculated maneuver. With a renewed sense of dread, I navigated to my credit card accounts. The same story unfolded. Thousands of dollars in unauthorized charges, luxury goods, expensive dinners, lavish hotel stays. It was a lifestyle I couldn't afford, a lifestyle I never aspired to, and it was all charged to my name. My hands trembled as I printed out the statements. The evidence of my son's betrayal starkly laid out before me. As the printer whirred, I paced the room, my mind racing, trying to piece together the puzzle. How could he have done this? How could he have stolen from me, his own mother? Anger began to simmer beneath the surface of my shock and disbelief. "He'll pay for this," I muttered, my voice hardening with resolve. "He will pay," Eleanor called, her voice cheerful as she chatted about wedding plans. "Mom," she said, her voice bubbling with excitement, "Julian and I have finally settled on a date, and guess what? We found the perfect venue. It's a beautiful vineyard just outside of town." I forced a smile, trying to sound enthusiastic, but the words felt hollow. The joy of her upcoming nuptials overshadowed by the dark cloud hanging over me. "That's wonderful, dear," I managed, my voice strained. "I'm so happy for you. We want you to be a big part of the planning," she continued. "Julian and I were thinking maybe you could help us with the catering. You know how much everyone loves your cooking." I hesitated. Catering a wedding was an expensive undertaking, and with my account strained, it was simply impossible. "We'll talk about it later, sweetie," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "I have a few things to sort out right now." After hanging up, I stared at the stack of bank statements in my hand, the weight of my son's betrayal heavy in my chest. The vineyard wedding, Eleanor's radiant face, Julian's easy charm. It all felt so distant, so unattainable now. My world had been turned upside down, my financial security shattered, but a flicker of determination ignited within me. I wouldn't let Marcus win. I wouldn't let him ruin my daughter's happiness. I would get my money back, and I would make him pay. This wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about justice. This was about revenge. And I was just getting started. The thought of the upcoming holidays, a time for family and celebration, now felt tinged with a bitter irony. I knew exactly how I would spend them, planning, scheming, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. The vineyard wedding, it was more than just a celebration. It was an opportunity. The dim living room felt colder than usual, the shadows stretching long across the worn carpet. I stared at the bank statement clutched in my hand, the numbers blurring through the tears welling in my eyes. $12, $12.78. $12.78. That's all that remained of my life savings. How could this happen? I whispered to the empty room. Just days ago, I'd had a comfortable nest egg, enough to help Eleanor with her wedding to Julian and still enjoy a secure retirement. Now, staring at this near empty account, a chilling wave of dread washed over me. I fumbled for my phone, dialing the bank's customer service number with trembling fingers. "Thank you for calling First National Bank. This is Patricia. How can I help you?" The automated voice chirped. "I need to check my account balance," I said, my voice shaky. I gave the representative my account number and waited, the silence punctuated only by the rhythmic thumping of my heart against my ribs. "Ma'am, your current balance is $12.78, the representative confirmed. "That can't be right," I insisted, my voice rising in panic. I had over $80,000 in that account just last week. "I understand your concern, ma'am," she replied calmly, "but our records indicate this is the correct balance. Has anyone else had access to your account information?" The question hung in the air, a cold knot forming in my stomach. "No, of course not," I answered automatically, but a seed of doubt had already been planted. I spent the next hour on the phone, navigating a maze of automated menus and unhelpful customer service representatives. Each call ended the same way: confirmation of my near-empty account balance and unhelpful suggestion to check for unauthorized transactions. With each call, the seed of doubt grew into a terrifying possibility. Someone had drained my account, but who? Exhausted and overwhelmed, I sank onto the sofa, the bank statements scattered round me like fallen leaves. I picked up another statement, this one for my secondary savings account. My heart pounded in my chest as I unfolded it, my eyes scanning the numbers. 0. This account, too, had been emptied. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, the room spinning. "This is a nightmare," I muttered, my voice barely a whisper. I called the bank again, this time demanding to speak to a supervisor. After another frustrating wait, a man named David finally came on the line. I explained the situation, my voice trembling with anger and fear. "Mr. David, both of my accounts have been emptied," I said, struggling to maintain my composure. "Someone has stolen all my money." He listened patiently, his voice soothing and professional. "I understand your distress, Mrs. Stewart. We'll do everything we can to assist you." He promised to launch an investigation, assuring me they would get to the bottom of it. But his words offered little comfort. The reality of my situation was stark and undeniable. I had been robbed, my life savings gone. I need to call Eleanor, I thought, needing to hear my daughter's voice. But what would I tell her? How could I explain that the money for her wedding, the money I had worked so hard to save, had vanished? The shame and humiliation burned in my throat, making it hard to breathe. Instead, I reached for another statement, this one for my credit card. I hadn't used this card in months. The balance should be close to 0. But as I unfolded the statement, a new wave of horror washed over me. The balance was over $20,000. $20,000 in charges I hadn't made. Purchases at high-end stores, luxurious restaurants, and even a down payment on a new car. Suddenly, A chilling thought pierced through the fog of my despair. The car, a sporty, expensive model I had overheard Marcus, my son, admiring just a few weeks ago. Could he? The thought was too terrible to contemplate. My own son. I scrolled through the list of transactions, a growing sense of dread tightening its grip round my heart. There it was, a down payment on the exact car Marcus had coveted. My breath caught in my throat, the pieces of the puzzle falling into place with sickening clarity. The lavish spending, the timing, the car, it all pointed to Marcus. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow. My own son had stolen from me. He had systematically drained my accounts, leaving me with nothing. The betrayal was so profound, so unexpected, that it felt like a knife twisting in my gut. I wanted to scream, to rage, to break something, but all I could do was sit there, numb with shock and disbelief. I gathered the statements, clutching them to my chest like a shield. The room seemed to close in around me, the silence amplifying the deafening roar of my thoughts. How could he do this to me? What had I done to deserve such betrayal? I replayed every conversation, every interaction with Marcus, searching for a clue, a sign, anything that could have hinted at this deception. But I found nothing, only the crushing weight of his betrayal. Despite the pain, a flicker of resolve began to ignite within me. I wouldn't let him get away with this. I would fight back. I would expose his lies and reclaim what was rightfully mine. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but I would not be broken. I would get my revenge. The phone felt slick and cold against my ear, each ring echoing the hollowness in my chest. "Thank you for holding, Mrs. Stewart," the bank representative chirped, her voice jarringly cheerful. "I've pulled up your account information. It appears there have been several large transactions recently, including to wire transfers totaling over $50,000. My breath hitched. 50,000. I'm sorry, but I haven't authorized any such transfers. I managed, my voice trembling slightly. Could you please tell me where these transfers were sent? There was a pause, the tap-tap-tap of keys on a keyboard filling the silence. One transfer went to a Mr. Marcus Stewart, and the other to a newly opened account in your name, also accessed by Mr. Stewart, with a listed address in Las Vegas. My own son, Marcus. The room spun, the cheerful floral wallpaper blurring into an unsettling swirl. Marcus, I repeated, the name tasting like ash in my mouth. Are you certain? The representative confirmed the details, reciting account numbers and transaction dates, each word a hammer blow against the fragile remnants of my trust. He was staying with me just last week. He'd asked to borrow my car, claiming his was in the shop. Mom, just for a few days, he'd said, flashing that charming smile I'd always found so disarming. Now, sitting here in the deepening twilight, the memory felt like a cruel joke. He'd even offered to make dinner that night, fussing over me, insisting I rest after a long day. He'd been so attentive, so helpful. Is there anything else I can assist you with, Mrs. Stewart? The representative's voice cut through my spiraling thoughts. No, I whispered. I think that will be all. I hung up the phone, the silence of the house pressing in on me. I walked slowly into the kitchen, the familiar space now feeling alien and unsettling. He'd been here, in this very room, feigning concern while systematically draining my life savings. I opened the junk drawer, the one where I kept all the important documents, birth certificates, insurance policies, and my passport. It was gone. My hands shook as I rummaged through the drawer again, a desperate, irrational hope flickering in my chest. But it was no use. The passport, along with my social security card, was gone. I sank into a chair, the cold tile floor seeping through my thin robe. How could my own son do this to me? The question echoed unanswered in the cavernous silence of my home. The Las Vegas address gnawed at me. He'd always talked about wanting to go there, the glittering lights and casinos holding a strange allure for him. Now he was there living the high life on my dime. My dime. The thought sparked a flicker of anger, a small ember in the vast emptiness. I wouldn't let him get away with this. He wouldn't win. I stood up, the numbness beginning to recede, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. I started gathering the bank statements, credit card bills, anything that could serve as evidence. Every fraudulent transaction, every stolen dollar, fueled my growing determination. I spent hours meticulously documenting everything, piecing together the timeline of his betrayal, the wire transfers, the new accounts, the cash withdrawals. It was all there, a clear and damning indictment of his actions. I called the police, filing a report, my voice steady and unwavering. I want to press charges, I told the officer, against Marcus Stewart, my son. The words felt heavy, but I didn't hesitate. As I spoke to the officer, a new thought began to take shape, a seed of an idea planted in the fertile ground of my anger. I wouldn't just report him. I wouldn't just let the legal system take its course. I would get my money back. And more. I knew Eleanor, my daughter, would be devastated by this news. She adored Marcus, always quick to defend him, even when his behavior was questionable. He's just going through a tough time, Mom, she'd say, her voice laced with a mixture of concern and exasperation. I hadn't wanted to burden her, but now the thought of sharing this burden with her, of having her support, felt like a lifeline. I called Eleanor, my voice shaking slightly as I recounted the events of the day. "Oh, Mom," she whispered, her voice thick with disbelief. I can't believe he would do something like this." Her reaction was everything I needed. "He's gone too far, Eleanor," I said, my voice hardening. "We need to do something." "What can we do?" she asked, her voice tinged with despair. "He thinks he can just disappear," I said, a grim smile playing on my lips. "He's underestimated me. He's underestimated us." Eleanor agreed to help. We spent the next few days working together, gathering more evidence, contacting lawyers, and exploring our options. We discovered that Marcus, in his haste to enjoy his ill-gotten gains, had made a crucial mistake. He'd used my name and social security number to open a new, high-yield savings account in Las Vegas, one that offered a substantial bonus for deposits over a certain amount. He'd deposited a large sum of my money, blinded by the promise of quick riches, and that account, I realized, was now accessible to me. With Eleanor's help, I contacted the bank, explained the situation, and, armed with the necessary documentation, managed to regain control of the account. The bonus, a significant sum in itself, was now mine. It wasn't everything he'd stolen, not yet. But it was a start, and it was a taste of what was to come. He thought he could steal from me and get away with it. He was about to learn a very expensive lesson. I looked at Eleanor, a new sense of purpose hardening my gaze. "This is just the beginning, sweetheart," I said, my voice low and steady. "He's taken everything from me. Now I'm going to take it all back." The flicker of anger had grown into a steady flame, and I knew with a chilling certainty that I wouldn't rest until Marcus paid for what he had done. Rain lashed against the windows, mirroring the storm raging inside me. I sat hunched over my laptop, the glow of the screen illuminating the mounting dread on my face. Earlier that day, the bank manager, a kind-faced woman named Mrs. Davies, had uttered words I still couldn't quite process. "Mrs. Stewart," she'd said gently, "I'm afraid there's been some unusual activity on your accounts." Unusual didn't even begin to cover it. Now, staring at my credit report, the full, horrifying truth was laid bare. It wasn't just the drained savings account or the maxed-out credit cards. There were loans I'd never taken out, accounts opened in my name at stores I'd never visited, a dizzying, sickening spiral of debt, all under my name, all a monstrous lie. "This can't be happening," I whispered, my voice barely audible above the drumming rain. I rubbed my temples, trying to ward off the throbbing headache that was building. "This has to be some kind of mistake." I scrolled through the endless list of fraudulent transactions, each one a fresh stab of betrayal. A $5,000 purchase at a high-end electronics store, a $10,000 cash advance, a lease on a luxury car I'd only ever dreamed of owning. The numbers blurred before my eyes, each one a testament to the colossal deception I'd been living under. Who would do this? I muttered, the question hanging heavy in the air. I knew the answer, a terrifying suspicion that had been gnawing at me since my card was declined at Target. I just didn't want to believe it. Eleanor, bless her heart, had been so supportive. She'd called several times that day, checking on me. "Mom, are you sure you're okay?" she'd asked, her voice laced with concern. "Julian and I can come over if you need anything." I'd reassured her, telling her I just needed some time to sort things out. I couldn't bear to burden her with this yet. Not until I knew for sure, but the evidence was piling up, pointing in a direction I desperately didn't want to face. I remembered a conversation with Marcus a few weeks ago. He'd been unusually cheerful, almost giddy. "Things are looking up, Mom," he'd said, a sly grin spreading across his face. "I've got a few exciting projects in the works." At the time, I'd been happy for him. He'd always struggled to find his footing, drifting from one dead-end job to another. Now, looking back, that conversation felt different, tainted with a chilling new meaning. The lavish new clothes, the expensive dinners he'd been treating me to, the sudden influx of cash, it all clicked into place with sickening clarity. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. He wouldn't. He couldn't. But deep down, a cold, hard knot of certainty was forming in my stomach. The pieces fit too perfectly. The timing, the extravagant spending, his sudden, inexplicable prosperity. It all pointed to him, my own son. I picked up my phone, my hand trembling. I needed to talk to someone. to confirm my suspicions, to make sense of the chaos swirling around me. I dialed Eleanor's number. It went straight to voicemail. "Eleanor, it's me," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "Please call me back as soon as you can. It's important." I hung up, the silence in the room suddenly deafening. I wandered into the kitchen, the familiar space now feeling alien and unsettling. I opened the refrigerator, the bright light a stark contrast to the darkness that had enveloped me. I stared blankly at the contents, unable to focus. I felt a wave of nausea wash over me, the weight of the betrayal crushing me. How could he do this to me, to his own mother, the woman who had sacrificed everything for him, who had loved him unconditionally? I sank into a chair at the kitchen table, my head in my hands. The rain continued to batter the windows, a relentless assault that echoed the turmoil within me. I closed my eyes, trying to block out the images flashing through my mind. Marcus's smiling face, his promises to take care of me, the lies he'd so skillfully woven. Then a flicker of resolve ignited within me, a spark of defiance in the face of despair. I wouldn't let him get away with this. I wouldn't let him destroy my life. I would fight back. I would expose his deception and reclaim what was rightfully mine. The path ahead would be long and arduous, I knew, but I would not be broken. I would rise from the ashes of this betrayal, stronger and more determined than ever. I opened my eyes, the storm within me beginning to subside. The rain outside had softened to a gentle drizzle, the first rays of dawn peeking through the clouds. A new day was dawning, and with it, a new sense of purpose. I would get my revenge. I would make him pay for what he had done, and I knew just how to start. I picked up my phone again, this time dialing a different number, the number of a private investigator. "Hello," I said, my voice steady and resolute. "I need your help." The game was on. The cordless phone felt cold against my ear. "Marcus," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "We need to talk." He didn't answer immediately, and for a second, the static on the line seemed to echo the hollow ache in my chest. "About what, Mom?" he finally asked, a hint of annoyance in his tone. "About the missing money, Marcus. The emptied accounts, the fraudulent charges." There was a beat of silence, then a nervous laugh. "What are you talking about?" he said, a little too quickly. "Don't play games with me, Marcus." "I know it was you, Mom, I swear. I have no idea what you're talking about," he insisted. "I've been busy with work. Haven't even had time to think about finances." He sounded almost convincing, but I'd spent a lifetime deciphering his lies. The subtle shift in his tone, the slight hesitation before speaking all telltale signs. "Work?" I questioned, letting a touch of ice creep into my voice. "You haven't had a steady job in months, Marcus. Don't insult my intelligence." I could practically hear him squirming on the other end of the line. "Look, Mom, I'm really busy right now," he said, trying to change the subject. "Can we talk about this later?" I knew he was trying to buy time, to concoct a plausible story. I wouldn't give him the chance. "No, Marcus, we're talking about this now. I have bank statements, credit card bills, even security footage. It all points to you." The silence stretched, thick and heavy, broken only by his strained breathing. Finally, he spoke. his voice barely a whisper. I can explain. I'm listening, I said, gripping the phone tighter. He started to spin a tale about unexpected expenses, a gambling debt he'd tried to cover, a friend who needed help. Each word felt like a slap in the face. He talked about desperation, about bad decisions, but never once did he offer a sincere apology. He never once acknowledged the betrayal, the sheer audacity of stealing from his own mother. I let him talk, letting him dig himself deeper with every fabricated excuse. So he finished, his voice pleading, "Can you help me, Mom? Just this once." The question hung in the air, heavy with the weight of his deceit. For a moment, I considered my response. I could play along, pretend to believe his lies, and then watch him squirm as the consequences of his actions caught up to him. But I knew that wouldn't be enough. I needed him to understand the gravity of what he'd done, the pain he'd caused. "Help you?" I asked, my voice dripping with a mixture of sadness and anger. "You emptied my accounts, Marcus. You stole my life savings. You left me with nothing." My voice cracked, and I took a deep breath to compose myself. "And you think I can help you?" he stammered, trying to find the right words. But I cut him off. "You're right about one thing, Marcus. I am going to help you." He sounded relieved, a flicker of hope in his voice. "You are." "Thank you, Mom. I knew you'd understand." "I'm going to help you," I repeated, my voice now cold and resolute, "by making sure you face the consequences of your actions." The line went silent. He finally understood. The game was up. What do you mean?" he stammered. "I mean, Marcus," I said, my voice rising with each word, "that I've already contacted the authorities. I've filed a police report, provided them with all the evidence, and they're on their way to your apartment right now." I heard a gasp on the other end of the line, followed by a string of curses. He started to yell, to plead, to threaten, but I simply hung up the phone. The silence in my home was deafening, but it was a welcome change from the lies and deceit that had filled it just moments before. I walked over to the window and looked out at the night sky. A sense of calm washed over me, a quiet satisfaction that justice would be served. This was only the beginning. Marcus had stolen my money, but he hadn't stolen my spirit. He hadn't broken me. In fact, he'd given me a newfound resolve, a burning desire to rebuild my life, and to make sure he paid for what he'd done. I knew the road ahead would be long and difficult. Recovering from this betrayal, both financially and emotionally, would take time. But I wasn't alone. I had Eleanor and Julian. They had been my rocks throughout this ordeal, offering unwavering support and love. They reminded me that family wasn't just about blood. It was about loyalty, trust, and unconditional love. And as I thought about them, a new plan began to form in my mind. A plan that involved not only reclaiming what was rightfully mine, but also ensuring that Eleanor and Julian's future was secure. Marcus had tried to take everything from me, but in doing so, he had inadvertently given me something far more valuable, the motivation to fight back and build a better future, not just for myself, but for the family I truly cherished. The thought of Eleanor's upcoming wedding, of seeing her happy and secure, filled me with a sense of purpose, and that, I realized, was worth more than all the money in the world. The cheap blinds in Marcus's apartment let in just enough light to illuminate the mess. Empty takeout containers littered the coffee table, clothes were strewn across the floor, and a faint smell of stale beer hung in the air. "He really lives like this," I muttered to myself, picking my way through the debris. This wasn't the future I envisioned for my son. This wasn't the life I'd worked so hard to give him the foundation for. It all started with that humiliating moment at Target. My credit card declined for a simple grocery run. Then came the bank's cold, impersonal voice informing me my accounts were empty. Empty. Decades of careful saving gone. Now, here I was, in his squalid apartment, clutching the key he'd unknowingly given me weeks ago, when he thought I was still the naive, trusting mother he could manipulate, just in case of an emergency, Mom, he'd said, a forced smile plastered on his face. Little did he know, this was an emergency. My emergency. I started with his desk, a chaotic jumble of papers and electronics. "There has to be something here," I whispered, sifting through the mess. Bills, junk mail, half-eaten bags of chips, nothing of real value. I opened drawers, one by one, each revealing more of the same disorganized chaos. "Come on, Marcus," I murmured, my frustration growing. "Show me where you hid it." I moved to a small filing cabinet tucked in the corner. It was locked. "Of course it is," I sighed, feeling a wave of despair wash over me. I considered giving up, turning round, and walking out. But the image of that condescending bank teller flashed through my mind, the pity in her eyes. No, I wouldn't be pitied. I would fight back. I rummaged through a nearby drawer, hoping for a spare key. Instead, I found a small metal letter opener. It was thin and sharp, perfect for prying. "Don't let me down," I muttered, sliding the opener into the lock. After a few tense moments of maneuvering, I heard a faint click. The lock gave way. Inside the filing cabinet, nestled among folders labeled with mundane titles like utilities and receipts, was a folder marked simply Mom. My heart pounded in my chest. This was it. I pulled out the folder, my hands trembling slightly. Inside were copies of my bank statements, credit card applications with forged signatures, even a fake ID with his picture and my name. "Oh, Marcus," I breathed, the weight of his betrayal settling heavily in my stomach. It was all there, laid out in black and white, irrefutable proof of his deceit. He hadn't just taken my money. He'd stolen my identity, my security, my peace of mind. "You've made a terrible mistake," I whispered, a flicker of resolve hardening in my eyes. This wasn't just about the money anymore. This was about justice. Amongst the documents, I found something even more damning. A detailed spreadsheet outlining his spending. Luxury watches, designer clothes, extravagant dinners, all purchased with my hard-earned money. He'd even booked a lavish trip to the Caribbean, a trip I could only ever dream of. "The Caribbean," I repeated, a cold smile forming on my lips. He'd be enjoying the sun while I struggled to pay my bills. But not for long. Not for long. I carefully photographed every document, ensuring I captured every detail. Then I replaced everything exactly as I'd found it, leaving no trace of my presence. Back in my own modest apartment, the silence felt heavy. I sat at my kitchen table, the incriminating photos spread out before me. It was time to put my plan into action. I knew exactly who to call. Eleanor, my daughter, had always been level-headed, practical, a lawyer with a strong sense of justice. She'll know what to do, I said aloud, the first hint of genuine hope I'd felt in days. I reached for my phone, my fingers dialing her number. Eleanor, it's Mom. I need your help. I paused, taking a deep breath. I know who took the money. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. It was Marcus. I continued, my voice trembling slightly, and I have proof. I explained everything, the forged documents, the stolen identity, the extravagant spending. Eleanor listened patiently, her legal mind already processing the information. Mom, she said finally, her voice calm and reassuring. Don't worry, we'll get through this. I'll make sure he pays for what he's done. Her words were a balm to my wounded spirit. I wasn't alone in this fight. Eleanor arrived at my apartment later that evening, her fiancé, Julian, in tow. Julian, a sharp and meticulous accountant, quickly grasped the intricacies of Marcus's scheme. He's been incredibly careless, he observed, pointing to a glaring discrepancy in the spreadsheet. This could work in our favor. The three of us spent hours poring over the evidence, formulating a strategy. Eleanor would handle the legal aspects, Julian would trace the money trail, and I would provide the emotional context, the human story behind the cold, hard facts. We were a team, united in our pursuit of justice. He won't get away with this, Eleanor declared, her eyes flashing with determination. We'll make sure of it. And as I looked at my daughter, her face set with a quiet resolve that mirrored my own, I knew we would. The Caribbean trip, it seemed, would have to wait. For Marcus, a different kind of getaway was on the horizon, one he wouldn't soon forget. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across my living room carpet, a stark contrast to the chilling reality I was facing. I dialed the fraud department again, my hand trembling slightly as I held the phone to my ear. Thank you for holding, Mrs. Stewart, the automated voice chirped, a jarringly cheerful interruption to my grim thoughts. Finally, a human voice. Yes, I'm calling to report fraudulent activity on my accounts, I explained, my voice steadier than I expected. My son, Marcus, has opened several credit cards and taken out loans in my name. The representative on the other end expressed sympathy, but it felt hollow. A rote response to a situation she likely dealt with daily. I understand, ma'am. Can you please provide your account details and some information about the unauthorized transactions? I rattled off the string of numbers and dates I'd meticulously compiled over the past few days. A growing sense of resolve hardening within me. Each fraudulent transaction I recounted, each stolen dollar I detailed, felt like a small victory in the war one was waging against my own son. And you're certain your son is responsible for these transactions, Mrs. Stewart? The representative asked, her tone cautious. Absolutely certain, I replied, the memory of Marcus's smug face flashing before my eyes. He bragged to my daughter, Eleanor, about his new business ventures, I added, my voice laced with bitterness. He even showed her the designer clothes and expensive gadgets he bought with my money. The representative was silent for a moment, processing the information. I see, she finally said. Thank you for providing these details, Mrs. Stewart. We'll begin our investigation immediately. The wheels were in motion. My plan was unfolding piece by painstaking piece. What are the next steps? I asked, eager to hear the words that would bring me closer to justice. We'll freeze your accounts to prevent further unauthorized activity, the representative explained, and we'll be in touch with the authorities to initiate a police investigation. A wave of relief washed over me. Thank you, I breathed, a genuine expression of gratitude this time. Hanging up the phone, I walked over to the window, gazing out at the quiet street. The familiar sight of my neighbor, Mrs. Henderson, tending her rose bushes brought a flicker of normalcy to my otherwise chaotic world. But the peace was fleeting. I knew this was just the beginning. Marcus's betrayal ran deeper than just the financial devastation. He had shattered my trust, violated the sacred bond between mother and son. The thought of Eleanor, my sweet, innocent daughter, being exposed to his deceit filled me with a renewed sense of anger. He won't get away with this, I muttered to myself, clenching my fists. The phone rang again, startling me. It was the fraud department again, a different representative this time. Mrs. Stewart, we've just received confirmation from several retailers, the man said, his voice grave. The purchases made using your credit cards match the description of items seen in possession of your son, Marcus. It was another piece of the puzzle falling into place. I see, I replied, trying to keep my voice even. Is there anything else? Yes, the representative continued. We've also discovered that Mr. Stewart used your information to open several fraudulent bank accounts, further exacerbating the financial damage. My heart sank. The extent of his deception was even greater than I'd imagined, but I wouldn't let it break me. Thank you for keeping me informed, I said, forcing myself to sound composed. We'll be contacting you again as the investigation progresses, the representative assured me. As I hung up the phone, I realized the true weight of what lay ahead. This wasn't just about recovering my stolen money. It was about holding Marcus accountable for his actions. It was about protecting Eleanor from his toxic influence. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, my peace of mind. I sat down at my desk, pulling out a notepad and pen. I needed to strategize. The police investigation was underway, but I couldn't rely solely on the authorities. I had to take matters into my own hands. I started making a list, outlining every single instance of Marcus's deceit, every lie he had told, every penny he had stolen. The list grew longer and longer, a testament to the depth of his betrayal. But as I wrote, a strange sense of calm settled over me. This list wasn't just a record of my losses. It was a blueprint for my revenge. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, emails, and meetings. I spoke with lawyers, accountants, and investigators, gathering evidence and building my case against Marcus. I learned about asset recovery, legal loopholes, and the intricacies of financial fraud. It was exhausting, overwhelming, but I was driven by a fierce determination. I wouldn't let Marcus win. I wouldn't let him destroy my life and walk away scot-free. One evening, as I was reviewing my notes, I noticed something I'd overlooked before. A small, almost insignificant detail in one of Marcus's bank statements. He had made a large deposit into an account I didn't recognize, an account linked to a luxury vacation rental company. My mind raced. Could it be? Was Marcus planning a lavish getaway with my stolen money? A slow smile spread across my face. This was it. This was the leverage I needed. This could be the key to my ultimate revenge. I picked up the phone, a new sense of purpose coursing through my veins. I had a call to make, a call to Julian, Eleanor's fiancé. "Julian, darling," I began, my voice dripping with false sweetness. "I have some wonderful news. I've decided to gift Eleanor and you a luxurious vacation for your upcoming engagement. I know how much you both deserve a break, and I've already booked everything. It's at that beautiful resort, the one Marcus was telling Eleanor about." I paused, letting the information sink in. Isn't that a lovely surprise? The fluorescent lights of the police station buzzed overhead, a stark contrast to the quiet fury simmering inside me. "I want to report a theft," I told the officer behind the desk, my voice surprisingly steady. He looked up, a young man with tired eyes. "Name?" he asked, pushing a form towards me. "Evelyn Stewart," I replied, my hand trembling slightly as I took the pen. "And what was stolen?" he inquired, his gaze already drifting back to his computer screen. This was it, the moment I'd been working towards. "Everything," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "My son, Marcus, stole my entire life." The officer finally looked at me, his expression shifting from boredom to something resembling concern. "Can you elaborate, Mrs. Stewart?" he asked, pulling the keyboard closer. I took a deep breath and began to recount the nightmare of the past few months. I described the declined credit card at Target, the shock of discovering my empty bank accounts, the mounting debt in my name. I detailed the meticulous records I'd kept, the fraudulent accounts Marcus had opened, the forged signatures, the stolen checks. I even showed him the photos I'd managed to take of Marcus driving my car, flashing around cash that was rightfully mine. With every word, the officer's initial skepticism seemed to melt away, replaced by a grim understanding. "This is quite serious, Mrs. Stewart," he said, his tone now grave. "We'll need to open an investigation." He began asking more specific questions: dates, amounts, locations. I answered them all, my mind sharp and focused despite the emotional turmoil churning within me. I handed over all the evidence I'd painstakingly gathered: bank statements, credit reports, photographs, even emails from creditors. It felt like a physical burden lifting from my shoulders with each document I relinquished. "And you're certain your son, Marcus, is responsible for all of this?" he asked, looking through the stack of papers. "Absolutely certain," I replied, meeting his gaze. He was the only one with access to my information. I explained how Marcus had always been charming, manipulative. He knew how to play on my sympathies, how to get what he wanted. This time, he'd wanted it all. The officer nodded slowly, absorbing the information. "We'll do everything we can, Mrs. Stewart," he assured me. "This kind of fraud is unfortunately common, but we take it very seriously." He explained the process, the potential legal ramifications for Marcus. Hearing him lay out the possible consequences for my own son felt strangely satisfying, not in a cruel way, but in a way that affirmed I was finally taking back control. Justice was coming, slowly but surely, as I left the police station. The setting sun cast long shadows on the street. I felt a sense of weary relief. The first step had been taken. The wheels were in motion. I knew this wasn't over, that there were still battles ahead. But today, a small victory had been won. I had spoken my truth, and I had been heard. I hailed a cab and gave the driver the address of my daughter Eleanor's apartment. I hadn't spoken to her much throughout this ordeal. It was too painful to admit the extent of my betrayal, even to my own daughter. But tonight, things were different. Tonight, I had something to tell her, something that would change everything. Eleanor opened the door, her face etched with concern. "Mom, what's going on? Are you okay?" She ushered me inside, her fiancé Julian hovering anxiously in the background. I took a deep breath and looked at them both, a small smile playing on my lips. "I have some news," I said, my voice filled with a quiet strength I hadn't felt in months. "The police are involved now. Marcus is going to be held accountable." Eleanor gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Julian looked stunned. I could see the questions swirling in their eyes. I continued, explaining the events of the day, the evidence I'd presented, the officer's assurances. As I spoke, a sense of peace settled over me, a calmness that came from finally confronting the darkness and emerging on the other side. "But Mom," Eleanor said, her voice laced with worry, "what about your finances? How are you going to recover from this?" That was the question, wasn't it? The one that had haunted me for so long. I smiled, a genuine smile this time, and reached into my purse. I pulled out a small, velvet box. Inside, nestled on a bed of satin, lay a sparkling diamond necklace. It was a piece I'd inherited from my grandmother, one I'd thought was lost forever when Marcus emptied my safe deposit box. "I recovered a few things," I said, my voice laced with a touch of mischief. "Let's just say Marcus wasn't as thorough as he thought." Eleanor's eyes widened as she realized the implications. This wasn't just about the necklace. This was about more than just revenge. This was about reclaiming what was mine. And I had a feeling this was just the beginning. "There's a lot more where that came from," I said, my gaze meeting Eleanor's. "A lot more." The weight of the past few months finally lifted, replaced by a sense of anticipation. Marcus had taken everything from me, but now I was taking it back. And this time, I was going to play my own game. The crisp autumn air nipped at my cheeks as I stepped out of the lawyer's office, the weight of months finally lifting from my shoulders. "We've served Marcus with the papers, Mrs. Stewart," Mr. Henderson had said, his voice firm but kind. "It's only a matter of time now." I nodded, a small, tight smile playing on my lips. Time. It had been a cruel thief and a patient ally. "Thank you, Mr. Henderson," I replied, my voice steadier than I felt. "You've been a lifesaver." Leaving the office, the bustling city streets seemed brighter, the car horns less jarring. It had been a long road from that dreadful day when my credit card was declined at the grocery store, the cashier's pitying glance afresh wound with every replay in my mind. My first call was to Eleanor. "Darling," I said, my voice trembling slightly, "it's over. It's finally over." There was a pause, and I could almost hear her drawing a breath. "Oh, Mom," she whispered. "Are you sure? What did the lawyer say?" I filled her in on the details. The legal jargon now a symphony of sweet justice. "Julian and I are so relieved for you," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "We can finally start planning the wedding without this hanging over us." A wave of warmth washed over me. The wedding. I had almost forgotten. Eleanor's dream wedding in Tuscany, a dream I had promised to make a reality before Marcus's betrayal had turned our lives upside down. Next, I contacted the credit card companies, one by one. "I'm calling to dispute the charges on account ending in." I began, reciting the numbers like a mantra I'd come to know by heart. Each conversation was a small victory, a brick being removed from the wall Marcus had built between me and my life. I meticulously provided Mr. Henderson's contact information and case file number, watching the disputed amounts dwindle with each call. "We understand, Mrs. Stewart," one representative said, her voice soothing. "We'll remove these charges from your account immediately and begin our own investigation into the fraudulent activity." Hearing those words, fraudulent activity, sent a shiver of satisfaction down my spine. The bank was next. "I'd like to close all accounts associated with this Social Security number," I stated calmly, my voice unwavering this time. The bank teller, a young man with kind eyes, expressed his sympathy for my ordeal. "We'll cooperate fully with the authorities, Mrs. Stewart," he assured me. "We want to see justice served just as much as you do." The thought of Marcus facing the consequences of his actions, of his carefully constructed life of lies crumbling around him, brought a strange sense of peace. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows across my living room, I sat down with a cup of tea, the first I'd truly enjoyed in months. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Eleanor. "Dinner at our place tomorrow night. Julian's grilling steaks. I wouldn't miss it for the world," I replied, a genuine smile finally gracing my lips. It wasn't just the steaks or the company. It was the normalcy of it all. The promise of a future where family dinners weren't overshadowed by the ghost of betrayal. The following evening, as we sat around Eleanor and Julian's dining table, laughter filled the air. "Mom," Eleanor said, her eyes sparkling, "I have a surprise for you." She handed me a beautifully wrapped box. Inside, nestled in tissue paper, was a brochure. My breath caught in my throat. It was a travel brochure for Tuscany, showcasing rolling hills dotted with vineyards, charming villas, and breathtaking sunsets. "We booked the venue," Julian announced, beaming. "Your dream venue, for your dream date." Tears welled in my eyes. "But though," I stammered, my voice thick with emotion. "Well," Eleanor said, reaching across the table to take my hand, "remember that trust fund Grandma set up for me? We decided to use some of it to help make your dream come true. Consider it an early wedding gift and a thank you for everything." I looked from Eleanor to Julian, my heart overflowing with love and gratitude. Marcus had tried to steal my future, to dim the light in my life, but he hadn't succeeded. He had, in fact, inadvertently paved the way for something even more beautiful. The wedding in Tuscany wouldn't just be a celebration of Eleanor and Julian's love. It would be a testament to my resilience, a symbol of the unbreakable bond between a mother and her daughter. a triumph over the darkness that had tried to consume us, and perhaps, just perhaps, it would be the sweetest revenge of all.